everyone, welcome back to Spooktober 2024. Today is day 4. Today's topic is Tombstone. Today's video will be quite a bit longer than the last couple videos. I wanted to challenge myself a lot in this piece with the lighting and everything, and that took quite some time. And I did have to speed up the speed paint itself a lot more than the other videos. Otherwise, this video would have been over 20-25 minutes long. So in this piece, I really wanted to challenge myself with different shapes and different things. I have drawn like tombstones before, but I wanted to give it a little bit more depth than what I've done in the past. So I drew a graveyard situation going on in this piece. And right now in the line art, you can see me just doing the tombstones on the side. And I decided to add like some cracks and stuff to make them look kind of decayed and old. I wanted this to be really eerie and unsettling. And I wanted to add a bunch of different elements in this piece that dive into that. So I added things like a raven and a lantern and some candles. Things that are old and spooky, in my opinion. I originally was going to do like the feathers on the raven, but I decided to black him out. I think it looked a little bit nicer in the piece because he is kind of small. I wanted to also, again, challenge myself with the lighting in this piece. I have a lot of struggle with nighttime pieces. I always end up making them look too bright, and I wanted it to not be that bright in this piece. So I originally color in my character, which for this piece I used my character Lisa, and I color her in, make her original color palette. Then I'll go in and do shading to bring her into the nighttime scene. Now I do end up adding flowers in the scene. If you've ever been to a graveyard, you know people tend to leave flowers for loved ones that have passed. So that's why I decided to add a little bit of flowers to this piece. Just something that adds a little bit of realism in a way. Now for this piece, it was kind of hard to tell whether it was the line art or the coloring that took the longest. But in my opinion, I think it was probably a tie. Maybe the lighting took a little bit longer than everything else. And I kind of loved the challenge that this piece gave me. I got to try a new technique. I really have not dove into ambiance lighting before, and I feel like I kind of captured that a little bit in this piece. I end up making all the colors kind of desaturated and then going in and adding a lot of highlights towards the end, which it ends up looking like moonlight, and I really like it. Another thing that I kind of struggled in this piece was getting the anatomy right in my character. It is something that I am trying to work on, but this character typically has dragon wings, but I felt like for this piece I was going to give her a little bit more of an angelic look just because of the scene. She's in a graveyard. I want her to look like she's visiting somebody or something like that, and I wanted her to look kind of elegant but also eerie and mysterious. I wasn't going for anything like super spooky, but I wanted a mysterious feel to this piece. I wanted it to feel kind of like you want to know why she's there. When I was in the sketching stage, it took me about an hour to 2 hours to figure out what pose I wanted her to be in. I did know I wanted to use that character specifically because I feel like she fits the vibe the best out of all my characters for this topic, and it took me a while to get a good pose that I actually liked in this. I think all in all this piece took me roughly like 4 to 5 hours to complete. I added a bunch of little tiny details here and there just to add, different things to look at. I added some mushrooms. I added a spider web on the tombstone. In the background I added a mausoleum. Just trying to add all the different details to make it seem like an actual full scene and not just a character in the middle of a blank canvas. I wanted it to be very complete in that way. Now, for the graveyard itself, I wanted it to feel very old and very, like, it's been there a long time. So that's why I added the cracks in the tombstones. I added spider webs and overgrown vines just to dive into these have been here for years and they're old and decrepit and nobody really takes care of them anymore. And her character is angelic in this piece, like she might be visiting from a different place, and kind of diving into that a little bit without adding any like religion or anything to it. I did add some crosses here and there because that's something you typically see in graveyards, not for any like religious reasons or anything like that. I do end up adding some like creepy trees in the background, just here and there, to add a little bit more detailing because I felt like there was a little bit too much blank space in the sky. I do add some bats as well because I want to dive into the fact that this is nighttime and it's spooky and eerie. I really loved the eerie vibe. Now here I'm getting on the coloring. You can see that I do her regular color palette, and I'll go back in towards the end and desaturate the colors a little bit. And I use an overlay to just erase some of the shadows. And I'll use her regular color palette for the highlights, which I think made it come out really good. I really liked that, the way it came out in that aspect. For me, this piece was a really trust the process kind of thing. Around the coloring stage, when I first colored her in, I started feeling like I was going to mess things up and not get that vibe that I was going for, but in the end I do end up getting it, and I trusted the process. I kept doing what I was doing, and I actually ended up really enjoying it and really liking it, but it did take me quite some time to get everything the way that I wanted it to look. I ended up adding some like little drippings here and there. They could be like, anything really, just some little red drippings. But I also added the extra details, like a little bit of grass here and there, show like this is like a field with tombstones in it, because that's what a graveyard is. Now, how I really imagined this piece was like she's visiting, it's like Halloween night or something like that, which is why I added the bats, something that's a typical Halloween thing. And I also added a little pumpkin sitting in front to add to that, like this is happening in October. I wanted that vibe, as well as just the eeriness and the spookiness. So far with the Spooktober prompts, I believe that this might be my favorite piece that I have done. I really like the difference compared to the previous days, how the lighting looks. Like I said in yesterday's video, that's something that I want to really work on this year. I want to work on different shading techniques, different aspects of lighting, and I also want to work on anatomy and other things as well. I'm trying to challenge myself to become a better artist, and that's typically the goal of Spooktober, to give yourself a challenge. I really wanted this to be something that I could look at and say I have made progress in my art. Now, it did take me quite a while to do all the coloring in this. Like I said, I do believe it was equal parts the coloring and the line art that took the longest. I don't think one took much longer than the other, just simply because of how intricate this piece was. I also do want to apologize if you do hear any background noise. My dog is kind of crazy today, and it is what it is. But now you're going to see me start on the background. I'm doing kind of a gradient for the sky. And I am also doing the grass. I wanted it to be muted because it's nighttime. And I'm using a bunch of different color palettes just so I know I get the right shades that I want, because that's something that I struggle with, is getting the shading right. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I am colorblind, so it does take me a minute to get the right colors. And I do end up going back through and making sure there are no colors that are bleeding over the lines. This piece, I really enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed the composition a lot. The pose in my character was very pleasant to do. I did end up kind of not liking how the feet came out, but you can't win everything. It is a learning experience, and I do struggle drawing feet, so it is something that I am working on. But here I am coloring the mausoleum, and I'm making it like a deeper gray because it's further away, and now I'm coloring in the other tombstone up at the front, and just making sure that it matches the other one that is off to the other side of this piece. I wanted them to be kind of symmetrical, but not identical, if that makes sense. I wanted them to look similar, but not identical. So this one has a little lantern hanging from it. The other one has some barbed wire and stuff like that. So they're similar, but they're not the same, if that makes sense. One of my favorite parts of this piece is the crow and the bats. I love the little animals and how they add just a little bit of ambiance to the piece itself. And they do add that little spooky, eerie vibe, especially the crow, because in a lot of pieces that I see that are Halloween themed or, spooky, I see crows or that kind of imagery, and it's kind of nice. And it's kind of a simple thing. Now here I'm just coloring in the mushrooms, which I decided to go with some red mushrooms. I'm not really sure what kind of mushrooms these would be called, but they're pretty simple to draw, so that's why I chose to do them. I did have to pull a color palette of mushrooms just to make sure I got the right colors and everything. Now I'm doing the lantern, which I decided to go with like a grayish silvery color for the hardware on it, and then I do like a little glow in it. I start with coloring the glass a little lighter just to show that it is glass, and here I'm adding the glow. I used a little airbrush tool to get the glow on there. And now I'm doing the candles, which I add a glow with the airbrush tool, which I think added some pretty nice lighting in this piece. A lot of this piece was just to experiment with lighting and the different techniques that I could do, and I quite enjoyed it. Now I'm doing the trees, which I did a very deep brown, and I didn't want to make them gray. I see in a lot of nighttime pieces people color the trees in gray, but trees aren't gray, they are brown. So I went with a muted brown. I felt like it fit the color palette of the piece, and it fit the vibe that I was going for. I didn't want them to look dead, because they are just trees in the fall. Because in the fall, all the leaves fall off the trees, and they look kind of dead, but they're not dead. They're still alive. So I wanted to keep some color to the trees that way. Now, towards the end of this piece, you will see me do some shading with the airbrush tool again. I'm going to be using, the actual pen name is called Salty Watercolor in this app, and I use that to make some fog towards the bottom of the piece. Now the fog, I use some little bright purples and some white, just to add a little bit of a glow to it. I felt like it added a little bit extra to the piece, and it made it look kind of nice. But back to what I'm coloring right now, I am doing the vines on the tombstones and the stem of the pumpkin, and I'm also coloring in the pumpkin, which I feel like I really enjoyed drawing the pumpkin this time, but it's not like the main focus. And I'm doing the flowers, and I'm doing them a very muted color. Like I said, I wanted the flowers to look kind of old, like they've been there a while. Like somebody came in and visited a relative that had passed a while back and left some flowers, and they've been sitting. It's kind of the vibe. Now I'm doing the lighting, which I really enjoyed this part. It was actually really fun to play with the techniques and just add some different things to it. And I feel it added some dimension to the piece as well. And I'm also adding in the little drippings, making sure that they're all colored in. The shading on my character was probably my favorite part of this piece. Now I'm just adding the shadows to make sure you can see she's sitting on top and not part of the tombstone she's sitting on. And I'm adding some shading on the sides, and it took me a minute to actually figure out what type of shading I wanted to do for the whole piece, but once I figured it out, it got a little bit easier, and I quite enjoyed doing it. I'm going in and adding all the little details and all the little things, which you'll see here in a moment. I'm going to add a little soft glow onto this tombstone here from the lantern, which if you've ever seen a lantern, they do leave a little bit of a glow on things, and same thing with the candles. It's not just going to be a shadow in one spot. Here I'm just adding in a little bit more lighting and a little bit more shading. Now here's that little fog I was talking about. And yeah, so thank you all so much for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed this piece. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more content from me. See you tomorrow.